2 waves of supercell thunderstorms brought widespread large hail to the St. Louis metropolitan area, and boy, do I mean large. Hi, I'm Chris May, host of This Day in Weather History, a podcast from the Weather Network in Canada. During the afternoon and evening hours of April 28, 2012, widespread hail damage to vehicles, houses, and businesses was reported in and around the St. Louis metro. This Day in Weather History. Welcome to St. Louis, Missouri, gateway to the West. Whoop, duck! On the July 23, 2020 episode of this podcast, I presented a story on the United States record hailstone. On that day back in 2010, the record-setting hailstone fell near Vivian, South Dakota, and measured 8 inches in diameter, 18.5 inches in circumference, weighed close to 2 pounds. This hailstone broke the previous United States record for diameter and weight, and I've covered all those stories on this podcast as well. And if you missed any of those dates, feel free to go back and listen to them after this one. They're cool stories, and they actually put this day's events into a unique perspective. You can do that from wherever you're listening to me right now. And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe to this podcast. That way you never miss another day in weather history. All right. Today back in 2012, NOAA reported that at least one person sustained an injury that was actually directly related to the hail. Get this. In Madison County, Illinois, a giant stone fell from the sky, hit a man who was in Washington Park at the time, hit him on the wrist, and broke it. Large swaths of golf ball to baseball-sized hail were highlighted in storm reports that were gathered during and after the event. Elsewhere, about 100 people were injured, and one person, sadly, was killed when a tent collapsed on a crowd that was gathered outside Busch Stadium after a Cardinals game at a nearby sports bar. Remember that This Day in Weather History can be enjoyed a number of ways. Right now, you are listening to the full version of today's story on your favorite podcast provider, but there is also the daily podcast video short. They are shot right here in my podcast recording studio, so you get that perspective, and oftentimes they will include visuals from that day's event from when it happened in weather history. So after listening to the full story, go check out the podcast video short on television or online anytime at theweathernetwork.com/weather history. So what happened? I mentioned earlier this happened in 2 waves. The first wave of supercell thunderstorms developed across central Missouri during the early afternoon and began moving east-southeast, ushered along a warm frontal boundary into the St. Louis metropolitan area and southwest Illinois. When it crossed over east-central Missouri, things got a lot more intense. It was then when large hail was first reported across the northern sections of St. Louis County. The winds at this time really cranked up. The hail became more of a deluge at this point, and the size of the hailstones ballooned to 2 3/4 inches or 7 centimeters in diameter, which is what we term baseball size. This on top of a driving heavy rainfall, I might add. And this rain and hail continued to carve a path of damage and destruction across most of southern Illinois. Later in the afternoon, a second supercell quickly intensified, and it was responsible for producing even larger hail. This time greater than 3 inches or over 7.5 centimeters in diameter. A new cell quickly developed across southwest St. Charles, Missouri, rapidly intensifying as it moved east, and this one started pitching baseball-sized hail all around before it crossed the Missouri River and into St. Louis County. This cell would become the most prolific hail producer of the day, with a large swath of St. Louis County and St. Louis City under attack for close to a solid 10 minutes by hail, golf ball sized to baseball sized. Now St. Louis is one hell of a sports town, but that was not the kind of baseballs or golf balls they ever wanted to see ever again after this day in weather history. Tomorrow is April 29th, and with spring showers come May flowers. That, as we all know, is a giant load of because if you're in Canada, spring showers means the temperature is warmer, and that means the snow is melting. And if it is too much too soon, we have life-changing flooding events, like what happened in Quebec in 2019. Remember that one? It's tomorrow, right here on This Day in Weather History, with me, your host, Chris May.